My name's Chris Glass. For those of you all who don't know me, I'm the Senior Vice President here at the Institute. And if you don't know about the Institute, we're not a think tank. We are indeed a graduate university on national strategic studies and also intelligence tradecraft. We focus in on international relationships and the art of diplomacy, but also those facets of intelligence tradecraft, and the elements that help individuals to form not only a solid worldview, but specific abilities to craft strategy and policy. So on behalf of the Institute, welcome. It's just great to have each of you all here this afternoon. It's my privilege to introduce Brigadier General Toveri. I've had the opportunity to get to know him over the last, I guess, about 6 months. Very good relationship and friendship, and he has a very impressive biography that I would really like to go through at this time, if you permit me. The General took over the Defense Attaché office for the Embassy of Finland in Washington on August the 1st, 2016. He's a native of Helsinki, Finland, and he served from 1981 to 1982 as a conscript, and he was then trained as a reserve officer. He then started his studies in the Defense Forces Cadet School in August of 1983 and was commissioned through the Cadet School in August 1985 as an armor officer. Hoorah. He has served as a tank platoon leader, tank company executive officer and commander, chief of staff of a tank battalion, commander of the armor school, and a brigade commander. He has also served in different staff positions as the Senior Staff Officer, G23, Division of Military Province, HQ, and in J3 and J5 divisions of the Defense Command. The General's assignments abroad include a year as a Senior Staff Officer in G2 Division in the Nordic Polish Brigade Headquarters, I4, S4 Forces, which was followed by 3 years in the Finnish Embassy in Stockholm, Sweden, where he served as Deputy Defense Attaché from 2005 to 2007. And he was then assigned to U.S. Joint Forces Command in Virginia as LNO. From 2010 to 2011, the General served in Afghanistan as the Director of Operations and Chief of Afghan National Security Forces, Development, and Regional Command North Headquarters, ISAF. Before his current assignment, he served as the commander of the Armored Brigade from 2011-2013, after which he took command of the Western Army Command until the end of 2014. From the beginning of 2015 to the spring of 2016, he served as the commander of the Guards Jaguar, I hope I said that correctly, Regiment and the Helsinki Garrison. His military education includes the Army Battalion Commander Course, the Finnish Defense Forces Command and General Staff College, Higher Command Course, and the National Defense Course. His decorations include the Cross of Liberty 2nd Class, Order of the Cross of Liberty, Knight 1st Class, Order of the Lion of Finland, Medal for Military Merits, the NCO Associates Golden Medal of Merit, Infantry Cross, Armor Cross, NATO Medal for both I4, S4, and NATO Medal ISAF, the Commander, Order of the Northern Star for Sweden, and the United States Joint Service Commendation Medal. General, on behalf of all of us, and specifically the Institute, it is a pleasure to have you here this afternoon, and can we now welcome the General as he comes and addresses.
Thank you for your introduction, and great to be here. As you heard, I'm a tanker, otherwise I'm pretty normal. That means that I can speak much faster than I can think, so if there's any problems, just throw me something to slow me down or make a question, so we can slow down the presentation, but that's the topic. Finland, the most capable defense force in Northern Europe, and that's my claim. Now I try to prove you that it's more or less like that. agenda, a little bit about our operational environment, where we are living, because that is a reason why we are putting a lot of effort to our defense. Then something about what we look like today, and actually then in the end, a little bit how we see that, how we are going to develop the Finnish defense forces so that we are capable also in the future. So let's start about the operational environment, as we call it. Our Chief of Defense, General Pekka, always said that we are living in a bad neighborhood. And I'm not talking about Swedes and Norwegians. We're not talking about that. But we are there next to the Baltic Sea. In the east we have Russia. And we all know what Russia is doing nowadays. Ever since 2000, when President Putin took powers, they've been growing their military capabilities. The defense budget rose from 2000 to 2013 10 times. Now the race has been stopped, but they still are building on their capabilities. On the west we have Sweden, our dear western neighbors. Biggest problem we have with the Swedes is ice hockey. Otherwise we are pretty good. And then of course NATO. NATO both from the south of the Baltic states and up north to our Norwegian neighbors. And the Baltic Sea, as you well know, has become much more restless than it used to be before 2014. Military activities have increased. The Russians conduct and arrange snap exercises. Quite often the flying in and close to our areas have increased 10 times almost. The naval activities have increased and so on. And of course, in order to respond to what Russia is doing, NATO has increased its capabilities and exercises in near areas too. For Finland, this is the most important thing. The 1,300 over 800 miles of land border with Russia. It has always affected us, and it will affect us in the future too. As I think it was Bismarck who said that Russia is never as weak as it seems, and Russia is never as strong as it seems. We have learned that. When you look at our operational environment, there are three areas which are very important to Russia. First, of course, is Moscow, where the administration is, where the businesses is, the biggest city in Russia with over 10 million people. Second one is St. Petersburg, second biggest city in Russia. Population about as big as Finnish population. Finnish population is 5.5 million. It's also a very important military industrial complex. A lot of most important shipyards which build warships are there, and they have a lot of troops around there. And then, of course, Kola Peninsula up north, where they have the most capable navy, the Northern Sea Navy, which has most of its nuclear capabilities that the Navy has. And one thing is also that from Gulf of Finland to Baltic Sea, and then from there to west goes the routes that Russia used to export its energy, oil and gas. And around 50% of the Russian government's income comes through exportation of gas and oil, and about 60–70% of that, well, close to 60% of that goes through Gulf of Finland. So it's a vital interest for Russia to safeguard those sea lines of communications. So this has always affected our planning. Our military planning has always been based on the fact that we have a capable neighbor, sometimes not so aggressive, sometimes a little bit more aggressive, but it's always there, and you have to be prepared for that. We have had last 900 years about 34 wars and skirmishes with Russia, so we always knew that Russia will be there and they will be coming back, even they temporarily might be weak. And when you look at the last years, I said the maneuvers like Sabat 17, which happens every 3–4 years, where the Russia practices its capabilities. The fact is that close to the Finnish border, there's not that many Russian troops actually. You know, when I graduated in 1985 from the cadet school, behind the Finnish border there were 12 Soviet divisions, 15,000 man divisions, and from those 12 divisions, 6 were category A divisions, meaning that they had the 6 hours readiness to attack. which meant that we were in 6 hours readiness. Compared to that times, the troops we have close to our borders are much less. I'll show them soon. But the fact is that Russia has created and worked very much on the capabilities to deploy forces within the Russian area through railways and by air very fast. So within a week they can deploy quite a big forces close to our borders if needed. And then the A2AD bubble, as they call it, is a big thing, and everybody talks about it. Capable Russian air defense, surface-to-surface missile systems, which might hamper operations close to the Russian areas of interest. We are living inside that bubble. We have S-400 system deployed down south here and up north, the Kolan Peninsula, and down south here we have also Iskander systems. So we are living in a bubble, and we've learned to live within a bubble. I mentioned the activities. We have something like 800 Russian military flights flying through the Gulf of Finland to south or back annually. And it's been around the same level since 2014, around 800. And every time the plane comes without a flight plan, or it comes without transponder, or both, which is about 1/3 of those flights, we scramble our jets to see that they stay on international airspace and don't incurse to our areas. So we have every week several times that we scramble our F-18. So when Brits told that last year they had to send the Royal Air Force 26 times to look for the supervise the Russian planes, we are like, well, that's nice. So it's a busy area. And when you look from the Russian point of view, how the world is, that they have the Northern Fleet military district up north with 2 army brigades and naval infantry brigade. They have the 6th Army close to our borders, 20th Combined Arms Army against Ukraine, and 1st Tank Army around Moscow. If there's a conflict between NATO and Russia, and if Russia wants to take Baltic States, the fact is that you have to, in order to secure your operations, you have to secure the northern shore of the Gulf of Finland, where we happen to live. That's for sure. So if there's a conflict, military conflict in the Baltic Sea area, it's more or less impossible for Finland to stay neutral. Which is interesting because we are a military non-allied country. We are not neutral. We are a member of EU. We follow the EU's joint security and foreign policy. And for example, when you look at the sanctions towards Russia, we follow them through fully. So we are not neutral in this recent conflict between West and East. We are definitely on the EU side, but we are military non-aligned, which causes some challenges. Well, since we are military non-aligned and we are supposed to defend ourselves, we have created the defense force, which we think is pretty good. But we also see that, especially nowadays, defending a nation is not defense forces business. It's a national business. And we have this, we call it total defense concept, which we have had ever since Second World War. Many countries, most countries during the Cold War had something similar. It was normal. It means that the civilian society is ready to participate in the war effort. It means that all the ministries and civilian authorities have also wartime tasks, meaning that they safeguard the critical infrastructure, they safeguard the population, etc. in time of crisis. They have a civil defense forces and plans to conduct that if needed. The difference is that when the Cold War ended, practically everybody scrapped that system and it's gone. We didn't. As I said, for 2 reasons maybe. Traditionally seeing that, well, something might still happen when you're living next to Russia, and second, we Finns are never too fast to take new ideas. It's like, let's see, let's wait 30 years and then we think about it. So we still have this system. It means that we have a strategy how to defend the whole nation and vital functions of our nation, so that all the authorities have a planning for that. They practice for that. We have, for example, still by law, if you build a block of flats, high house in Finland with bigger than a certain size, you have to build a bomb shelter to the basement of to that building by law. So, for example, in Helsinki, where we have about 500,000 people, we have about 600,000 room for 6,100 people on shelters. You know, you have these huge parking garages under the shopping malls, etc. They are all also ready for bombing as a bomb shelters. So we have this ongoing. We have practiced it all the time, and we also take care of the resilience against population's minds and feelings, however we see info warfare. So we put a lot of effort to educate our people. We have a pretty good education system. Nowadays we have put in elements where we teach kids to read the news so that they would recognize fake news or be skeptical about anything they see on the news and check the background before they start to believe it, etc. So some people, there are some studies done in Western Europe, and they claim that Finland is the most resilient country in Europe. And I can believe it. As I said, we have a long history, and we never let that readiness go down. It's been kept up. Another reason, of course, is that we have a national conscription system. So we have everybody has a bidding. Almost every family has very interest in defense because they have family members who are part of our reserves. And then, of course, I have to be honest. One thing that makes it easy is that Finland is probably the most homogeneous country in the world. You know, we have 95% of the population is Finns. Very few foreigners or immigrants in Finland. I always think that it must be either the weather, the food, or the Finns, or the combination of all these three. And you compare to, for example, Sweden, where the population of 10 million, they have 1.8 million immigrants in the country. So almost 20% of the population is coming from somewhere else. So it's much easier to have this resilience when everybody is more or less with the same background. And as I mentioned, we have the national service system still. About 76% of the manly population serve. About 3 to 4% take the civil service, and then the rest are freed in peacetime due to physical or mental problems they have. About 3 to 5% of females serve on a voluntary basis. We have, from the population of 5.5 million, we have 1.2 million who are under 60 years of age, and from those people, and we have 900,000 who are obliged to serve in our defense forces if needed. They are in our reserves, 900,000. We actually use only 1/3 of that, but if case needs be, we can call in people not only to serve in the defense forces, but also to serve in a civil defense or whatever other task. And we have a very strong willingness to defend the country. Last poll said that 78%. We ask people that if Finland is attacked, should we take armed resistance even though the end result is uncertain? So we are telling them that, you know, being a small nation attacked, it doesn't necessarily go well. Still 78% says that yes, we should do it. That's highest in Europe. Next is Russia, about 20 points below us. In Germany, 18% of the people think that they should defend. They would be ready to defend the country. And Finnish Defence Forces is also a very trusted institution. We always compete with police. We are the two top ones when they ask this. We are around 90% police, about 92%. And as in the United States, the parliament, the politicians are pretty low there. Too bad. Well, this is the defense forces in peacetime. We have a defense command, which is the highest military HQ. And they have certain agencies and establishments. We are directly under defense command, like Finnish Defense Intelligence Agency, for example, Finnish Logistic Agency, and so on. Then we have 3 services with number of units underneath. But the thing is that this is a training organization. Our Navy and Air Force are capable of getting their capabilities up and running with the peacetime personnel. We can get all of the F-18s up and fighting. Navy can get all the ships out to sea and start fighting with the personnel they have in. If the conflict continues, they need the reserves to have the support and continue the operation for weeks. Army is totally reservist and it requires mobilization. The only part in Army we have is our special forces and our Army aviation units, which can start operations with the peacetime personnel. Everything else has to be mobilized, which is a bit of a challenge in time of SNAP exercises and rapid deployments close to your borders. So altogether you talk about 12,000 active paid personnel, officers, NCOs and civilians. We train about a little over 20,000 conscripts every year and about the same number of reservists. But our wartime strength is 280,000, and in European terms, that's a lot. The Russian Federation's armed forces are about 800,000. They tried to go to million for 1.5 decades, but they haven't been able to recruit enough people to do it. Our wartime army is second biggest in Europe, right after Turkey. So this is our wartime troops. So army is the biggest. We always, the Finnish Defence Forces is dominated by army. Army has been the biggest service. Always, we have a saying that in Finnish Defence Forces that the Air Force has the most intelligent officers, the Navy has the most handsome officers, must put the uniforms, and the Army has the most officers. So wartime army is 185,000 troops, which are divided to 3 different categories. We have our operational forces, around 36,000, a couple of motorized and mechanized brigades, battle groups, mechanized and motorized battle groups. They are more or less half a brigade, 2,500 soldiers each, and supporting capabilities. These are equipped with best equipment, and they are capable of conducting operations, mobile operations all over Finland. Then we have something we call regional forces, around 108,000. And these forces have heavy firepower. We have a lot of artillery, mines, whatever, but they don't have the operational mobility. They have tactical mobility, but buying tanks and combat infantry vehicles and all that stuff, it's pretty expensive. So we can they are regionally aligned so that they can fight in certain areas. Defensive fights if needed. And then we have something called local forces, which we use to support the local authorities, mainly in the rear areas, guard, vital installation, and so on. Light infantry mostly, little like the other Nordic countries have home guard, which is light infantry volunteer forces, a bit same idea. And then we have border guards. Border guards in peacetime are under the Ministry of Interior. It's a police organization or paramilitary organization. They have police authorities, but they are organized as military organization, and they actually all officers are trained by defense forces. Time of crisis, they have their own wartime organization. They have own conscript training. And time of crisis, the whole border guards or part of it can be attached to defense forces if needed. They are great capability in the border areas because they are very good in REC and special operations, which they practice a lot. Then we have, talking about the equipment, 185,000 is a lot, but we have also some equipment to equip them. And things which, for example, to compare, we have about 200 main battle tanks. It's about the same amount of main battle tanks than France has. France has a population of 65 million. We have 5.5 million. It's a sad story, not about our strength, but the weakness of Western Europe nowadays. We have heavy artillery, like 800 pieces. We have about 3 or 4 times more artillery than France has. We still believe that we will fight as an underdog, and if you fight an underdog, you have to have a very good ground-based air defense capabilities, and we have that a lot. nowadays when we are talking about the US Army, is cranking it up because it was more or less phased out during the Cold War times when there was no need for air defense when you have the air superiority. Now things have changed, so we have kept that. Things like mines. When you talk about mines and IEDs, yes, we love them because we are always planned to be defender. So, for example, anti-tank mines, which a big part of them are intelligent mines. So you have calculators, different sensors, whatnot. You take the 1,300 kilometer long border. We have more than one mine per each meter, just anti-tank mines. So coming to Finland and invited is not necessarily easy. Then we have the Navy and Air Force. The Air Force, the main capability is 62 F-18 C&D version Hornet fighters, which we have now done them to a midlife update, and in that midlife update we created them air-to-ground capability. So we have JSO, JDAM, and just last month we had the final test shooting with JASSM systems in China Lake. So now we have a JASSM system also operational, which is a great capability. Our Navy is based a small coastal Navy. They have missile boats with surface-to-surface missiles. They have mine layers. They have mine countermeasure ships, and then a lot of coastal units, meaning coastal infantry battalions and battalion groups, and coastal defense systems, mainly missile systems. Our Navy's two main weapon systems are sea mines. We again plan to use a lot of sea mines to protect our sea lines of communications and prevent anybody to access our harbors without permission, and then surface-to-surface missile systems. And then we have some joint capabilities in logistics and intelligence and so on. And then I claim that we have the best defense forces and defense capabilities in Finland, in Northern Europe. Well, when you compare the other Nordic countries, Sweden has a total force of 28,000 Army, Navy and Air Force soldiers and 22,000 Home Guard. The Army has 2 brigades, 120 Leopard tanks, out of which they have crews for 3 companies, 44 tanks, because they went to professional army and they just can't hire people to serve in the professional army. It's a Nordic state with very high standard of living and very good social welfare. It's not easy to get people to serve. Navy, Air Force, 60 just recruitments. Norway and Denmark, about the same ballpark. They have about 17,000 troops in Army, Navy and Air Force, then stronger Home Guard. But Home Guard, as said, it's a light infantry unit. Both countries have one army brigade. The navies are pretty strong because they are by the sea, and they have Denmark, for example, because Greenland is part of Denmark, so they have some bigger ships to go out. Air Force from 30 to 52 F-16s. So yeah, we have a lot of more capabilities. But I think the biggest thing is not only the size of the forces, because these 2 guys, they have to be NATO members, and if nothing else, they are living under the nuclear umbrella of NATO and United States. But the biggest thing for Finland is that we have kept the resilience. We still have the total defense system, so that we have readiness to go war if needed. We, for example, still stockpile gas, oil, wheat, strategic spare parts, and stuff like that for 6 months. And I always tell total defense courses to our civilians that in time of war, if somebody cuts our sea lines of communication to west, that's a challenge because 90% of our exports and imports go through sea to west, go and come from west. I'm not worried about, as I said, gas and oil and stuff like that. We have stockpiled for 6 months. But if the sea lines of communications are cut, we run out of coffee in 1 week. And after that, defense forces start to have trouble. We drink more coffee than anybody else in the world, about 20 pounds per person per year. Yeah. So we are strong, but again, we can't fight alone. We know that. Finnish society is it's like all the Western societies. It's very vulnerable and needs constant global trade to work. Our idea in the defense is that you need two things. You need to have the capable reserves and big reserves because we have a big land area. We are fifth biggest European nation by land area. So we have big area to defend, and with small population, you have to have large reserves through national conscription system. But on the other hand, in the current battlefield, that's not enough. You need to have some spearhead capabilities so that you can also fight a modern fight. That's, in our case, our Air Force with air-to-air and air-to-ground capabilities, our Navy with the best capabilities, and also Army with the Special Operation Forces. We, for example, have MLRS systems, the rocket launcher systems from the United States. We have as many as UK with capabilities up to 160 kilometers depth, and we are looking to have even longer strike capabilities. We participate in operations. This current situation last year, we have about 600 troops outside in operations. Main operations are in Iraq. We have around 110 in OER, and then in Afghanistan about 30, and then Lebanon we have a battalion minus. We are going to draw troops from Lebanon and put more troops to Afghanistan and Iraq in the near future. But if you look back in the history, if we would be a NATO nation, I've been twice in NATO operation, and if Finland would be NATO operation, and you compare to our population and how many troops we sent out, we would be one of the biggest troop contributors in NATO to NATO operations. So we have done it ever since 1990s from Balkans. Well, how to keep yourself up and running and capable and relevant also in the future. So we have development programs. We have a white paper. Government gave a white paper February 2017. It comes every 4 years. When we have new government, the new government makes a white paper about the defense, how to build up the defense for the next 8 years. And then you ask, what's the big idea? Government sits 4 years, and then they talk about defense next 8 years. Well, the thing is that one peculiarity of Finland is that we have a lot of parties. We have about 10 parliamentary parties, 4 bigger ones and half a dozen smaller ones. And in every government is a coalition government with 3 to 5 parties. So it means that after next elections, there will be one or more parties who were in opposition, who were in the government, who will be also in the new government. So that gives our continuation, because when they go to next government, they are not going to say that, well, the decisions we made last year were very stupid on defense. So that gives our continuity. The last 2017 white paper very clearly said that we will increase our wartime strength. It used to be 230,000, now we pushed up to 280,000. We improve readiness of all services. As said, we used to have 6 hours readiness. After the Cold War ended, we really scrapped that, as all the other nations. But now we are boosting it up to be again back in the readiness, which is hours, not days. We have to replace some capabilities that we are losing through the aging of the systems, and the main emphasis is on the Army in this decade. We are working on the Army, and then next decade it's a Navy and Air Force capabilities we will renew, and then enhance certain capabilities like intelligence, joint fires and long-range precision engagement capabilities, and then cyber defense. But the readiness thing is very important. As said, Russia can deploy, let's say, within a day they can deploy 20 to 30,000 troops close to our border. Within a week they can have up to 7 to 8 brigades and more forces following. So creating a better readiness is a big thing. And one thing is that when you're talking about the Western democratic nation, it's all about laws. Unfortunately, the guys behind the border don't follow any laws or rules or regulations. They don't have to. We have to. So in order to improve our capabilities, not only to be faster in mobilization, but also better in facing the hybrid threats we have nowadays. We have put a lot of effort on legislation and things. We have created, in order to be better prepared, we have created a certain readiness forces from our active service officers and NCOs, and these are mainly for hybrid cases. You have, I don't know, little green men coming in, and in the beginning, before we have a wartime situation, and actually by law it's still a police case, but the police doesn't have a firepower, so we have to be able to deploy something within hours with heavy firepower. So we use our active personnel. But every single officer and NCO in our system is also a wartime leader. Everybody is a minimum platoon leader, company commander, battalion commander. So we can't tie them up for those tasks. Therefore, we have created another readiness force from conscripts. Every Finnish army unit nowadays have a company plus unit where everybody serves a year. So that 6 months is a training base, and after that 6 months, they are then 6 months in readiness, training of course continuing, so that we can get them mobilized within hours. And then we have created some readiness forces from the reserves, so that we have certain reserve units can be deployed from 6 to 24 hours. They are mobilized and ready to go. And then higher readiness to mobilize, meaning that we are exercising and putting more effort to get the whole field army mobilized within weeks. And seeing how long it takes to mobilize nowadays the NATO professional armies, it's sad. You know, they are talking about having 30 battalion task groups mobilized in 30 days. In 30 days, we have all 280,000 guys and girls in readiness easily. But the legislation is, as I said, another thing. We have put a lot of new legislation to give more powers to the president, for example, to start mobilizing troops without declaring war. More longer training times for our reserves, new legislation and powers for police and border guards, and more powers for us to give them support if needed. And more new military intelligence legislation giving us more powers, especially in the cyber domain, and so on and so on. And this has been very, very important part of our readiness, and it's also a great big sign we give to our neighbors that we are taking these matters seriously, because we are creating new laws. It gives the authorities different kind of powers to face also hybrid threats. And when we are talking about hybrid threats, I have to say that in my opinion, the current days, the Russians are much more dangerous than the old Soviets. I think that Soviet Union has been always much better in art of war. They created the idea of art of war and operational warfare well before anybody in West even thought about it. They came with the maneuver warfare and deep fights and all that much before the Germans came in 1930. But the thing that always have saved us was that they were never able to build and train a massive army which could do all those great ideas that the brainiacs came up with. They couldn't fight the way they wrote. So we always want the tactical fight, and especially in the Finnish terrain, that's very important. Well, now they have created a new way of warfare, where they have a great idea about hybrid warfare, where you wage the war, and they have waged that war now many years, without going to kinetics. You don't need to go kinetics, you don't need to have forces, and if you really need to have then use force, you need only 20 to 30,000 guys, like in Crimea. And even though they can't even recruit a 1 million man army nowadays, but they can create 20 to 30,000 guys on a Western or close to Western standards. So they have much more options to work, and they are much more agile, aggressive, and much more bigger threat than the old Soviet Union system used to be, at least from our point of view. Well, when we are developing capabilities in the army side, this decade, I said, we are putting most effort to army. We want to create better joint capabilities so that the army is better able to use the capabilities of Air Force and Navy, and also to support the digital command and control system, ISR, and fires. A lot of effort to partnership with our neighbors, because it doesn't matter if you are the world's best Finnish army. You know, if you don't benchmark what you know, what you do, and you learn from the others. Mechanized forces, force protection, and counter UAV are some things we are doing, and to operate in all domains, including cyber. Big things are happening next decade. Our F-18s are getting old. By mid-20s, we have to start replacing the F-18 fleet. And the government made a decision that the fighter planes will be replaced. We estimate it to cost between 8 and 10 billion US dollars, and that will come outside the defense budget, which was an important decision. And on the Navy side, same thing. A lot of Navy ships are getting older, and they will replace those capabilities with the new Corvette class, four Corvettes costing about, with weapon systems, close to 2 billion, and again, it's coming outside the defense budget. However, the upkeeping of these systems is not going to come outside the defense budget. So when we buy something, we have to be very careful that we don't buy anything that the maintenance and upkeeping will kill us next 10 years. The Corvette system, I said 4 Corvettes, they are actually 3,000 ton Corvettes with frigates firepower. The Finnish Navy has always been good in squeezing a lot of firepower to small frames. So it will have surface-to-surface missiles, air defense missiles, torpedoes, mines too, and sonar. Every Finnish warship has a sonar inside, believe it or not. And the F-18 replacement, we have a competition going on, and that's been a big challenge. We have 5 contesters. We have Super Hornet and F-35 from the United States, Jas Gripen from Sweden, Typhoon from UK, and Rafale from France. Decision will be made beginning of 2021, so that we have first planes and limited operational capability 2027, something like that. The challenge has been that this competition is very transparent, and especially with the United States, I think Lockheed Martin and Boeing are obviously used to. Well, let's say they haven't been forced to sell their products, because everybody has been queuing up behind the door. Can we buy your stuff because it's so great? We are going around and saying, prove us that F-35 is as good as you claim it to be. And that's been somewhat of a shock. But it will be interesting what the end result be. I really hope that it will be a US version. We, as I said, we do a lot of cooperation. We cooperate with NATO. We are NATO partner. We have some troops in the UN. We participate in different EU defense capabilities. We have a Nordic cooperation going on. And then we have bilateral cooperation with the United States and Sweden. But the bilateral cooperation with the United States is the most important thing we are doing currently. And it's very deep nowadays. We exercise together. We exercise all the services exercised with the US troops, either in Finland or areas close to us. We procure a lot of material from the United States. We have currently 69 cases. It's worth $1.8 billion open procurement ongoing with the United States. And we also support each other in R&D, research and development. We, being a small nation, there are limited capabilities we can give in R&D, but there's one field where we are pretty good, and it's Arctic. Living in Finland is on the same level as Alaska. When you look where the population lives, we are the most northern country in the world. All the infrastructure, everything has been built for cold weather. We have second biggest icebreaker fleet in the world. And for example, the US Navy says that Finland is the 4th most important R&D partner to US Navy. And it's not because our Finnish Navy would have a lot of capabilities. They have some, but it's our industry and academia who has a lot of Arctic know-how, and maritime, especially maritime operations in Arctic regions are somewhere we can give some support. So, and then we do also some other intelligence and operational cooperation, and also operate in the same deployments, especially in the Middle East. And thing for us with the US is that most important is that, for example, when we procure equipment for the United States, it's always FMS, foreign military sales procurement. And the thing with the FMS is that in FMS deal, United States government guarantees that two things. First, that the capability is what we have agreed upon. So if it's not Finnish Defense Forces going to Boeing and say that, hey, these things don't do what they promised to do. It's the US government who says, hey, those things don't do what they're supposed to do. And you can bet that the US government has a little bit more leverage than the Finnish government in these issues. Another thing is that the US government guarantees that the capability is usable in all conditions, including wartime, which is pretty important when you talk about procuring a new fighter plane, that somebody guarantees, in this case US government, that no matter what happens, we will guarantee that you have spare parts and other support that the planes will be flying. We talk about Finnish model in Finland, and it's, I said, comprehensive security. It's a whole of nation view. I often say that Finland doesn't have a defense force. Finland is a defense force because so many people are inside and participating in it in a way or another. General conscription is important because it gives us the manpower and girl power nowadays we need. It helps to keep us the willingness to defense and give us the large reserves we need. But it's something, if you, especially in Europe, if you talk about conscript system, it's normally the professional guys are very skeptical about it. Skeptical about the capabilities, how good are these guys, and what's it really producing. We put a lot of effort on the training of these our conscripts and our reserves. When young guy or girl comes to army, in second week we give him a weapon and he starts shooting, school shooting. Third week we start combat shooting. In US Marine Corps I heard that it's week 8 when they get weapons. So we put a lot of effort in 8 weeks of basic training. Normally you shoot 500 rounds, live rounds, just to get the proficiency with your weapon, because we, in Finnish terrain, individual shooting skills are important, and so on. We've been in operations with our professional forces. We've seen that in Afghanistan, in the fighting, we have no problems. Our guys are as good as professional guys when it goes to warfighting skills, and especially when you are fighting in the Finnish soil, we have an edge. And nowadays, when the US 2nd Cavalry comes annually to exercises to Finland, and they always say, and it's not only the battalion which are participating in exercise, it's also up to General Hodges say that these guys learn so much exercising here with our reservists and conscripts. Because I said, we have kept up the capability to go to combined arms fight as an underdog against superior enemy, and we have exercised that ever since Second World War. So we know that you don't stop in front of minefield, because if you stop there for 10 minutes, the artillery will kill you. You either go through with the mechanized breaching, or you go around, but you don't stop. You don't talk to radio until you have contact with the enemy, because the EW will kill you before that, and so on and so on. And we train our guys that we go to jugular. You know, the best place to fight Russians is when you are in a close fight, because they can't use the heavy firepower they have. But we also have to rely on some high technological systems to be relevant also in a modern battlefield. And international cooperation and bilateral cooperation are very important part when we are building these capabilities, learning how to use these modern systems well and learning from other countries.